Okay, so this is a new season of the Design Nuances Edu Series, and we have a few objectives of this series, right? So, one of the primary things is for each of you to learn a nuance of a new topic very specific to design, architecture, or fashion. Now, this will not only help you with your basic understanding of the topic itself, but these are very relevant for your general knowledge, and of course are very important from a a test point of view as well, right? But it's not just about the test, it's about you gaining knowledge and the awareness of everything around you. But apart from that, this series is all about these topics being delivered by a school, one of the partner schools. So we would there are a few select schools that we think you should consider, and the idea is that you get introduced to this new school, you interact with an expert from that school, absorb that knowledge that they have, and also get an understanding of what that school does while you learn a topic as well. Now, how it's going to go is there's going to be about 15 minutes about the school. We're going to spend about 40 minutes on the topic as well. And then there will always be time for Q&A. So please keep your microphones on mute. You are most welcome to ask your comment or ask questions in the chat, or maybe answer questions, and switch your webcams on. It helps a lot by keeping the faculty engaged, right? If you do want to ask a question, please feel free to raise your hand, and you'll be given an opportunity to ask your question. Yeah. Today's topic is typography. All right. And the school in focus is ISDI Mumbai, which is part of the Atlas Skill Tech University. We have Professor J. Ranjit, who's a self-taught artist, a printmaker, photographer, and an educator with a career spanning 15 years across 8 industries, including social media, content development, wedding and food photography, fine art, event and experience design, and theater. With over 30 solo and group exhibitions in that time, Jay is also the co-founder of Fluxus Chapel, an art library activity space in Mumbai, which focuses on community experiences and education in art. Jay is also the associate director of student experience and a teaching faculty at ISDI School of Design and Innovation and Atlas Skill Tech University. Yeah. So, Professor Jay, thank you so much for coming in today. And sorry, before we get into a discussion with you, those of you who are interested in applying to ISDI, the applications are already out. You can go on to DQ Edge, click on that link and apply. And maybe we could ask a few questions regarding the application process as well, so that they would be able to answer that. So we also have Adnan Patel here, who's been the main person for the coordination and making sure that this workshop happens. Thank you, Adnan, and thank you, Jay, for making it here. Jay, happy to see you here. And looking
Absolutely a
forward.
pleasure.
Yeah, looking forward to you take it over.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to the Sunday morning conversation on typography. Before we dive into typography itself, I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the process of how we work at ISD Atlas and how you can be a part of the family here. It's a very simple, easy to go through process. There's not much to it, and unlike most other spaces, you don't have to really rack your brains and mug up a lot of information and go crazy trying to remember the entire world's library of information. So just to make things a little bit easier, a little bit quicker, I'm just going to share my screen and visually walk you through the whole process. Can you guys see my screen now? All right, lovely.
Yes.
Lovely. So we call it make a date with your future because obviously this is where you want to be and where you want to go. And you definitely want to know more about it. So we always say, come have a conversation with us, learn a little bit more about who we are and what we do. Um, we are Atlas Skill Tech University, and we have a curricular collaboration with Parsons, which is in New York City, which means that we're using a curriculum that is international in nature and not just a traditional basic one that you might get in an old school course in India. Our partnership with Parsons is quite extensive, and we do work with them a lot in various different areas of expertise. And of course, based in Mumbai, we are in the center of the city, so everything's accessible, everything's all over the place around us, and you don't have to really lose your mind traveling around and wasting time. Instead, you could spend your time doing a lot more things, including getting in touch with the corporates around us for your internships and observerships and even jobs and placements throughout the entire space. We have 8 different specializations. So depending on what you'd like to think of, we have communication design, fashion design, interior design, product design, fashion luxury and lifestyle design, strategic design management, fashion communication and styling, and 3D animation and VFX. So it's a wide range of things. And the beauty of it is it's all interconnected. It's all internal learning that you can do across different spaces. So let's say you want to study one thing, but you want a little bit of something else. We have a major minor track system set up so that you can gain as much as possible, plus a whole host of electives from across all the schools in the university. So you can really widen your base and complete your entire learning in one space. We also have opportunities for professional spaces, which means that throughout the entire structure of 4 years, you're actually getting in touch with the industry, you're working with them, and you're ready to actually work in the industry before you even graduate. We're happy to say that this year's pre-placements are going so phenomenally well that we're super proud of our students. We have huge companies coming in and picking our students left, right, and center. And now, in fact, the students have the problem of choice in terms of where they actually decide to go. So we're really, really happy with that whole process. And if you guys have more questions about that, you can definitely speak to us at the university to get more information. This is just a couple of examples of our students and where they're placed, including TCS, and on-campus opportunities for everything beyond the classroom just as well to make sure you're safe, you're looked after, and that you have a full belly every single day. We also have lots of opportunities across the school in terms of immersion trips, student council, and buddy systems for making sure that you're doing the best you can with the support that you need, as well as global networking and exposure, which includes exchange programs with spaces like HKU Utrecht in the Netherlands and other schools around the world. We also have a lot of clubs, which again, fantastic opportunity to grow your skills and play to your strengths. And we have a sports club that really goes all out to participate in as many tournaments as possible across football, cricket, and many other sports. Now, how do you get into ISD? Very simple. We have something called the ISD challenge. It's not an entrance exam, so don't think of it with stress. It's a challenge to see how far you can push yourself, but we like to make sure that you have fun along the way. Our applications are open already from the 15th of September. The deadline for submitting your portfolio and your DAT after your application is 25th of October. Like Dion said, you have the link on your website, on your portal, so you can run there and quickly start your applications once we're done with today's session. But if not, you can always just go to isdi.in and apply there. Basic information, simple form, go in and fill that in. And our interviews will begin from the 1st to the 30th of November. Very simple kind of process, and I'll walk you through that in a bit. The results will be announced 15th December, and the acceptance deadline is 15th of January. So you have enough time to make a solid decision, to make sure you have everything in place. And if you have any further questions, to have them answered before you make a choice. And your semester fee deadline for the first semester would be 30th of May, 2023. So you're completely set with well in time to make sure you're geared up for 4 years in design education and you don't have anything pending. Now, the process is simple. Like I said, you simply visit the website, you fill in the form, It's a very simple kind of form, just basic information that we need. Uh, the 4 steps to completing the entire process is submit your application with a statement of purpose. This is where we get to first get to know you. So a simple bit of information about why you'd like to join ISDI, why you're interested in design, what your strengths and your talents are, and what you'd like to learn going forward. The second is to upload your portfolio and to complete the design project. So if you don't have a portfolio ready, don't stress. We have an alternative option that is judged just as fairly and at the same level. It carries the same scores, it carries the same marks. So nothing to worry about. You will not be discriminated against in any way. Uh, Once you're done with that, you complete the design aptitude test, which is a 60-minute online examination. It's honestly a lot of fun. We as faculty love taking it every now and again just to refresh ourselves and to have some fun doing the whole thing. It'll look at your analytical skills, your logical thinking skills, your creative thinking skills, as well as your writing skills. So everyone gets a chance to really excel in an area of their expertise, and it creates a very even playing ground for everyone. And once you're done with all of that, you appear for a personal interview, which is more of a conversation than an actual grilling or anything like that. So you can walk into it completely relaxed, completely stress free, and actually enjoy the process of having a discussion. Because as a school, we believe that, well, if this is going to be a partnership, then it should go both ways. You should get to ask questions of us, we should get to ask questions of you, and everyone gets to have a conversation together to build that bond and to make sure that everyone's in the right place at the right time. So your SOP, very simple. What drives you and motivates you every morning? What do you wish to innovate for in the future? Tell us about your background, things that you have done that are transformational in nature, something that really shifted the game for you, something that you're passionate about and that you would like to explore. And you can upload this as a PDF file or a Word document in the form itself. There is a space for it. And the word count is 300 words, so you don't really have to give us a whole like epic or a major story in a book form. So you don't have to really break your head here. We just want to get to know you and who you are. There are some examples that we have. If you'd like to see these examples, you can always reach out to us and we'll be able to share it with you. It's very simple, very straightforward. Just for the sake of time, I won't dive into this right now, but we will be doing sessions on and off for people who would like to know how to crack the ISDI challenge. We have another one coming up soon. So if you'd like to know about that, you can always reach out to the team and they'll be happy to help. The portfolio is, again, very simple. 8 to 10 of your best works. We don't need an entire collection of your entire body of work right from start to finish. So just something nice and simple, something straightforward. Give us your 8 to 10 best pieces. If you have drawings, paintings, sculptures, graphic designs, animation, images, or photographs or sketchbook pages, you can just put images of those onto the slides and share those. And if you have musical performances, acting performances, or film, or visual animation, you can simply upload those to a Google Drive folder, make sure it's an open sharing setting, and put the link in the portfolio so that we can click through and take a look at those. We want to see as much as what you can give us, as many different things as possible. So share all of your skills, share all of your talents, and yeah, very straightforward. You can upload it as a PDF, as JPEGs, or a consolidated zip file, not exceeding 500 MB, which is why we're saying any musical performances or videos to put into a drive so that you're not exceeding the limit. The score will be out of 100, and it's a very straightforward kind of approach here. So you don't have to really lose your mind. Examples of some of the pages that we've received. So you can consider layouts, you can think about how you'd like to present your work and show us your entire working process. Now, if you don't have a portfolio, we have an alternative, which is a design project. Very simple again. We have 3 topics of choice here called One World, Tracing Nature, and Translating Tomorrow. You have to just pick any one of these themes and create one visual work based on one of these themes. You can make a drawing, you can make videos, photographs, sculptures, 3Ds, animations, anything you'd like to, honestly. All you have to do is submit that and a 500-word essay describing how your ideas developed, what was your process of thought. Again, this is the same 100 marks. So whether you submit a portfolio or a design project is entirely up to you, and you will be judged equally the same. So you don't have to really get scared of anything. We're very inclusive here at Atlas ISD. We want to give everyone a good opportunity, so don't stress. Then we have the design aptitude test. Like I said, it looks at logical reasoning, analytical thinking, general awareness, storytelling. It's another 100-mark score, and it's designed for you to have the best possible chance of scoring highly to be able to represent yourself in the best light. We know that some people have better portfolios as compared to aptitude tests. Some people have better aptitude tests as compared to portfolios, which is why everyone gets a chance to do everything, and you get the best scores as an average overall. These are just some of the examples of questions that you might see. They're multiple choice. So again, you don't have to sit and do calculations and lose your mind over silly things. You can actually just visually try and solve problems, and try and complete everything within the 60-minute time limit. If you do feel like you haven't made the right choice, you can always change your multiple choice answer before you go to the next page. Once you start, you can't stop, so you have to finish the entire thing. And of course, number 4 is a nice fun one, which is a visual storytelling question. So you get to create a narrative basis, a picture, and try to come up with a nice story within 15 sentences. So once all the multiple choice things are done, you have a chance to flex your writing skills and really show us who you are. And of course, finally, the personal interview. We're looking at 6 main target points here, which is empathy, observation, perception, articulation, skill set, and awareness. Now, we do know that several people aren't the strongest with the English language. So if you do need to say something in a language that you prefer to make your point come across, we'll never begrudge you that. So please go ahead and say what you need to in the way you need to. Tell us who you are, be honest, and show us what you know of the world around you. This is again the final 100-mark step. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's as simple as that. You don't have to lose your mind, and you can really enjoy this entire process. It'll take you literally an hour and a half to submit your portfolio and do the design aptitude test. So you can do that entire thing on one day as soon as you finish your application, which again, the application will take you maybe 10 minutes to fill in. So all in all, you don't have too much time to waste on things unnecessarily, and you get the most time to really spend on bettering yourself and becoming a part of the ISDI Atlas family. So with that, information about the school is always available on our website. So you can just go to isd.in. You can reach out to Adnan. You can reach out to anyone at the team. We're always happy to help and kind of communicate anything that you might need. And yeah, with that, shall we dive into typography?
There are a few questions here, Ranjit, if you can have a look at that.
Sure,
Okay, I think
absolutely.
you've covered some of them. Kindly advise what you're looking for in the SOP and the weightage in the application process.
Sure. So the SOP, just again, like I said, tell us who you are, tell us what inspires you, tell us what your reasoning is for getting into design and what motivates you, and that's pretty much what we need. In terms of the online, the process of the interview, it's an online process. You don't have to step out of your home. You don't have to be uncomfortable. You have to be completely relaxed. And so we've said online. So wherever in the world you are, you can always apply and have a chat with us. Um, in terms of application details, again, if you need any information, drop a message to Adnan. He's here. He'll answer your questions for you. And if there's anything in particular that you might need, then just let us know. And at the end of the session, I'll be happy to take a few more questions and clarify anything that might be required.
All right, cool. There
Yeah.
are a few more questions, but should we take that at the end after this, during the Q&A part of this program?
Yes, I think so. I think that'll be a better idea for us so that we don't lose out on time to actually have a conversation today. And then we can dive into that in much more detail that way and stay
Absolutely.
on track.
Absolutely. Also, just so everyone knows, questions about the school, we're going to be doing an e-meet specifically with ISDI. It's coming up one of these days. Swati will announce that. So all your questions regarding the admissions about the school, we can answer in that session. For now, the idea is to learn about typography and take that forward. So looking forward to the next part of the session, Jay.
Absolutely wonderful. So, all right, everyone, let's dive into this. And I'd love to hear from you guys in the chat every now and again in terms of what you see on screen. And if you've seen something that kind of fits the bill or bucks the trend and is something completely different, because it's a conversation, it's a discussion, it's something that has to go back and forth, just like with typography. That's why I've put the tagline over here at the bottom, a visual conversation. When we talk about typography,
Jay, sorry
yes,
to
Adnan.
interrupt you. I have written in the chat, but it is a request to all the students if you can just switch on your videos. No, because for Professor Jay, it is not like fair, no, because he's just talking to a black screen. So it will be really great if you can switch on your cameras. He can see your reaction. He can talk accordingly. So please switch on your cameras, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really sweet if everyone can do that. So thank you so much. Um, Again, it's a conversation. Conversations don't happen with a blank screen in front of us. A mirror sometimes does help, but then you're just talking to yourself and you're not really getting a conversation out of it sometimes. But regardless of that, it's a visual conversation. Typography is having a way of speaking to an audience that you can't have directly in front of you. When you are in front of a person, you can have nuance, you can have expression, you can say things in a certain way, have an accent put on perhaps. Uh, but when people are reading things, when they're seeing things, it's not always clear, it's not always apparent, and it's important to be able to get your message across in the right way. Now, how many of you have sent a WhatsApp message to someone and they've misunderstood it because there was no capitalization of letters, or there was no comma somewhere, or a full stop somewhere, or an exclamation where there shouldn't have been? Have we had those situations? Guys, remember, I want to hear from you. This goes both ways. Yeah, lovely. So if we've had these conversations and things have gone a little bit awry and they don't make a bit of sense, then wouldn't it be better if there was a way for us to actually implement some kind of information transfer? Right now, we do have those options in terms of grammar and punctuation, but sometimes it's not enough, right? Just having commas on a billboard isn't really going to get the message across. So we need to make sure that whatever we're trying to say, whatever we're trying to sell, whatever we're trying to pitch, it needs to make a lot more sense in terms of how we're getting our concepts across, which is why we're looking at the idea of typography as a visual conversation. Now, when we consider what it is, it's about selling your idea. So let's look at a definition of typography. It is the art of arranging letters and text in a way that makes the copy legible, clear, and visually appealing to the reader. It involves font style, appearance, and structure, which aims to elicit certain emotions and convey specific messages. In short, typography is what brings the text to life. Right. Now, obviously, we don't have enough time in today's session to really do a deep dive into the bits and pieces of every single part of type and to really understand all of that. That would require a fair amount of time. But what we can do is understand nuances through what we're seeing on screen here. You'll notice that in order to sell my idea, right, I've used multiple colors. I've also used two different font sizes. I've also ensured there's enough space so you can read things. I've also added certain weights to the type, and that allows for a distinguishing of information. So we have our headline, which is selling your idea. So that's the first thing that you need to see. The picture has type in it because that's relevant to what we're talking about. So I'm selling you the idea, even visually, that we're talking about text, that we're talking about type, that we're talking about words. Now, when we look at the actual copy, the actual paragraph that we're reading, the information, we're looking at the arrangement of letters in a certain way, but there's a space between each letter. Depending on how you arrange that space, it changes the nature of the information, it changes the nature of how we're approaching things. Certain letters require a little more space around them, some require less. But if you put them all crowded together and squished together, well, then it doesn't read very well. So you have to be very aware of how visually appealing things are and how we're using negative space to sell an idea better. Now, obviously, I have the same font going through this entire piece of text, but I have two weights and I have two colors, and a combination of the weight and the color changes the nature of the type. So here, the art of in a way that makes the copy to the reader, font style, appearance, and structure, all of that is bold, but in black. And the more important information, such as arranging letters and text, legible, clear, and visually appealing, those are in orange, which means they're highlighted the most, and I see them as the most important things because I need to use those elements in order to tell my story. So in this way, you can change the nature of the information that is being presented and really push a message across in a much faster way. So when you think of a billboard, right? I'm sure we've all seen billboards as we've driven up and down streets and walked around. They usually don't have a lot of text on them. It's a tagline, it's something that makes you remember the product or the brand. It's something that catches your attention, makes you look at the board and look for smaller information that is more relevant. So in this way, we can really look at something, but see something and observe details. And it allows us to do it in a nice manner. So what do we need in this case? A gentleman called Dyer outlined 7 ways that text could be successfully contrasted: size, weight, form, structure, texture, color, and direction. So let's talk about each one of these. When we say size, we're talking how big or small that particular piece of text is. But when we say weight, we're talking about how thick or thin it is, how heavy or light it is. So if you look at the screen here, we have 2 typefaces, but we have 2 different weights. But we have 3 different sizes. So it changes the nature again of how we see things and how we approach things. The next is the form. The kind of font you choose will determine how serious or casual, how strong or how weak, how direct, and how abstract your information will come across. I'm assuming all of us have read a book at least once in our life, yes? Have we? Have we read books, guys?
Yes, sir.
Lovely. So if we've read books, we've also read comic books, I'm assuming. Yeah. So if we've read comic books and books, what's the difference between them? Which one do we take a little more seriously?
Books.
And why do we take books more seriously?
Because like books will be giving somewhat informative.
Maybe because like they don't experiment with the font much. It's one font throughout the book.
Correct. So it's got a consistency level that seems to be a little more plain, a little more simple, a little more easy to grasp. But it's not as expressive. We tell stories through comic books, which are full of punch and power. And in order to do that, the typography in it has to also share that same emotional push. So that's where the form comes into play, because if you just look at a basic text in a book, so for example, I have a couple of books over here with me, right? Very simple, very straightforward, and also very boring. I know my screen is blurred, but if you just look at the form, it just fills a page completely really badly. And it's just dull and stressful and boring. But when you look at a comic book, there's images and only the absolutely vital text that needs to be there, which means the text has to become part of the image and the form will matter just as much. That brings us to structure as well. If my text is structured nicely in a paragraph format, it's easy to read and I can put a lot in there. But if my size is too small, then the structure goes for a toss and my entire page composition becomes near impossible to consider. That brings us to texture. Now, how does texture come into typography? Can anyone give me an example of where texture comes into play? Any examples, anything you can think of where texture comes into play? I'll give you a hint. Typography isn't always on paper. Any guesses?
So woodwork maybe?
Yes, absolutely. So the grain in the wood, right? Or yes, as Meenakshi says, in movies, the props and things might have markings on them. Those textures really change the nature of the language, right? And that texture also makes it more interesting to engage with. If I have a flat surface like a water bottle, right? It's boring, it's flat, the ink becomes really dull. But the minute I add some texture into my typography, now I can make it stand out, I can make it pop. I can give it shadows, I can give it a little bit of a character, so to speak. Which brings us to color. You may have the perfect font, you may have the perfect size, but if you put the wrong color into that, it can change the size and scale of the text, even though it hasn't actually physically done that. It becomes an optical illusion. How many of us have used Comic Sans? At least once in our life, as kids in school, I would imagine. Yeah. Dion sir, have you used Comic Sans before? Absolutely. So a lot of people, like Meenakshi saying, is embarrassingly yes. But here's the thing. Comic Sans was designed specifically as a typeface for children with special needs. Individuals with autism are able to read text in Comic Sans much better than any other font because of the rounded shapes and forms. So everyone really says that, oh, it's horrible, it's terrible, it's messy, it's too childlike. Well, guess what? It was designed for children, which is why Comic Sans works with almost every color. It's playful in nature. But you think of Arial, right? Arial as a font, or you think of, let's say, Times New Roman. How many of you have ever read a book or a piece of text in Times New Roman in red or in blue and said, something's not right here, right? Times New Roman works beautifully in black. But in red or blue, something seems off. Now you put green into it, you can't even imagine Times New Roman in green. It just sounds ridiculous in your head. Because color really changes the nature of the type itself. Times New Roman is a very thin type. It's a skinny type. So when you're putting green, a very expansive color into a skinny type, it just suddenly messes with your head. So when you're choosing the colors, you have to be really, really sure that, oh, it's going to do this or that to a particular typography piece. And that brings us to the last one, which is direction. If you don't have your type in the correct direction, reading it becomes nearly impossible, right? I'm assuming everyone's read at least one poster, which makes no sense whatsoever because the text was vertical instead of horizontal. Or you might have seen an arced title and body copy within it, and it just makes no sense because you're trying to figure out what the actual title is by turning your head around like this and looking completely ridiculous while everyone's staring at you and being like, why can't this person read normally? But it's not the person's fault, it's the designer's fault. Because they decided, we have space, we will experiment, we will do anything we can, because why not? We have type on a path tool in Illustrator, chalo, I will type on any kind of path. It's not always the greatest thing. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And playing with direction is one of the worst mistakes you can make if you don't want people to read things. It's easy to make such a simple little error just by not considering how your user is going to actually see the words, is going to read the words, is going to make sense of it. So you have to be able to push deeply and darkly into that area of saying, okay, I'm going to make sense of this. It's going to actually have to come together in some way. Which is why we say this. Not everything reads the same. So why force it to? Right? We have languages and we have, I'm going to skip a slide and come back to that, but this is relevant to us right now. The Google Translate app can repeat anything you say in up to 90 languages, from German and Japanese to Czech and Zulu, but not everything looks the same on a page. Just think about it. Typography used to be done by hand, right? So a lot of calligraphic flourishes come into it. How many of us can read Korean or Chinese here? Anyone? No? Okay. If you can spend some time, look at the differences between Korean characters, Chinese characters, and Japanese characters, right? Handwritten stuff. And then look at it on your Google Translate app. It doesn't look the same. It doesn't feel the same, which means sometimes you don't read things correctly, right? If you can write in any of our many South Indian languages and dialects, you'll notice that even the smallest change in the shape of a letter will have a different translation, it'll have a different pronunciation, it'll have a different context entirely. Right? In Hindi or Marathi, if you decide to put the matra in the wrong place, or you shape the matra incorrectly, for example, if you decide to just loop it completely, now it becomes a totally different character. Right? So when we write something, it's different to when we're designing it visually on a screen. So we have to be really sure about this. Which is why I also say, as a tip on the side here, say only what needs saying. Pointless words mean nothing. Because that happens in our conversations as well, right? Would you guys agree? If we just keep rambling on and on and on and on and on, it makes no sense to the conversation. You've lost the plot and you're just like, what is that person trying to say? If we also use unnecessarily flowery language, we lose the point of the conversation. This is why if you think about it in school, you guys are constantly told, just get to the point. Don't say things unnecessarily. Don't give me extra words that I don't need, right? We continue to say that in the university also because we don't need pointless words. We need the context, we need the idea, and we need it clearly. And a client will tell you the exact same thing. I have 30 seconds to understand your pitch. So if you're going to use random words, and especially on a page, if you're going to put random text over there that's not legible, how will I understand what you want? And how will I understand what you're giving? So as typography creators, we have to be really, really sure that we're making sense with what we're doing, right? So here's how we make sense. Here's how we make better design. Do establish a typographic hierarchy. That means for the different pieces of text that you have on a page, make sure that each one has a particular size. Make sure it's placed in a way that reads first, second, third. Right? So that's why over here on this page as well, I have make sense in orange and make better in white. I have to make you look at the highest contrast and say, oh, I need to see that first. And then I'm going to read everything else. So what needs to be on the left, what needs to be on the right, all of that needs to make sense. I have a DO spray, which I don't know if it will make sense or not. Yeah. But if you can see, they've put different colors in different places so that it becomes a little more readable. So that you see the right things first, second, and third. The first thing you're meant to see is Nivea Men, because that's the brand name and that's the specific subsection of the brand. Then comes Fresh Boost. That's your product name. So you should be able to read that and distinguish it from all the other different products that are there. Then it says long lasting freshness. So it's giving you a reason why you should be using it. What is the distinguishing factor, right? And yes, the combination, Arvind, if you're seeing the combination of blue and white, it makes it stand out because it's a very high contrast and it's not the most optimal way of seeing things. But because those are the brand colors, the blue of the Nivea circle is different from the blue of the entire bottle. or the can, right? So it creates further distinguishing factors. And so we see that first. So yes, absolutely right. It's a typographic hierarchy now. Plus the font sizes are different. So it means I see something first, second, and third and read it accordingly. Which brings us to the second point. Don't make the text too small. Yeah, how many of us have read a book where the font size was probably like 6 on that page? And you have so many words and you're just like, oh my God, this chapter is never ending. There's just so much text. Why do I want to read this? Right? You've opened a catalog and you can't read the caption under the picture because it's tiny. So when we talk about typographic hierarchies, we have headlines or titles, you have subtitles or subheaders. You then have body copy, and then you have captions. You also have taglines. So each thing needs its own space and its own hierarchy to read first, second, and third. Yes, Shripan, other classic books of that sort are very font sizes are very small because they just said, okay, we want to be cost effective at printing, so chalo karte hai. Again, that question arises, just because I can, should I? Right? We have lots of options in front of us, but does it make sense? Especially when you consider younger readers. Giving them a tiny font size means they have too much to read too fast and they can get lost. On the other hand, when you have older readers, if the font size is too small, they literally can't see. I have glasses, I'm 34 years old, right? And I've got these because I've been reading things on screen, but people put the font size so tiny, I have to come this close to try and see it on my screen, which is terrible. I mean, it's a screen, for crying out loud. You have enough space to make things nice and big and for me to scroll through. Why wouldn't you do that? Why would you make it so tiny? We don't think with logic sometimes. Yeah. The next one is, do choose an appropriate font for the body text. Yeah. Think about this. The tip also, I've placed it on top of the text here. I haven't bothered to move it out of the way. Right? Why would I do that? Because that's what people do. They'll make something of a certain font size. They'll choose the wrong font and they'll place images on top of things unnecessarily. So we don't want that to happen. We want to have sense coming across and we want the font to be able to match with the actual emotion of the text. Right? If I have a serious piece of text, I can't have some loose comic-y styled font over there. It makes no sense. So I want to be able to make sure that whatever my information is, that I completely clear everything and anything. And I have only the important things there that convey the right message. Something that makes absolute sense as I'm talking about it. Yeah. It should be clear. It should be crisp. It should have a real life to it. Yes, Arvind, like books with pages like manuscripts, which don't have pictures. When you have a text heavy page, if your font sizes are tiny, if your font is incorrect, imagine trying to read like an annual report that's written in Garamond. It's a flourishy serif styled font. I'm not going to read it. It's just going to look so much like a Bible or something from the 15th century. And I'm just like, yaar, what is this Gutenberg press thing that you're giving me with all these flourishes and everything? I'm trying to read information about making money over here. If I was reading a storybook, that font would be perfect because it would add a level of emotion to it. It would bring it in really pretty and make me say, okay, I want to read this. So if I do decide to pick up a Bible and read it, I can't have Arial as a font in the Bible. It's going to look terrible. Right? It's a sans serif font. It's kadak. It's very strong. It's very short. It just doesn't have the emotional context that I want. Right? That brings us to the next point, which is don't use too many different fonts on one page. Right? We've seen so many posters that have like 16, 17 fonts, and you're just like, what am I supposed to look at? Why am I reading this? What sense does this make? And then you don't actually get the information that you need out of it. So generally what we do is we limit ourselves to a maximum, pushing the limit maximum of 4 fonts on a page. And that's only usually because we have 4 different types of information to deliver. So we'll use one font for the headline and the subheader. We'll use a different font for the body copy. We'll use a third one for a caption for a picture. And we might use a fourth one for citations, if at all. Generally, you only need 3, but if you do need a fourth one, that's where the reasoning comes in. So it becomes easier to work with, easier to type out, easier to read. But more importantly, the composition on your page makes sense. The hierarchy becomes more accurate. You're able to flow through it much smoother. And that's another reason why we have the next point here. Do give your text room to breathe. If you just have a block, a rectangle of text continuously, no paragraph breaks, no line breaks, no spacing, no full stop anywhere that makes any sense or is visible, then you don't know what you're actually reading. You're just so tired of looking at the page that you don't actually want to get any information out of it. So you have to be really, really sure that, oh, there is a moment of pause. There's a moment to actually stop and see something as one chunk instead of one big block, right? How many of y'all have ever sat and eaten an entire liter of ice cream? Nobody? Why? Because it'll actually kill you, right? It'll be too much. Your teeth will fall out. Your stomach will be bloated. You'll be like, I don't want to look at ice cream ever again in my life. Which is why you eat small amounts. We give scoops. We give bowls. Yeah. Little bits at a time. So even with typography, if you can give the text room to breathe, it gives the person a chance to absorb the information, to use that negative space to separate one piece of information from another. It allows us to distinguish important pieces of text from less important pieces of text, right? And of course, then that brings us to don't make continuous use of all caps. Can you guys imagine if I made this entire page with only caps, like all caps? Would you be interested in reading this slide? Right, so I've got 2 no's in the chat. Why would it be a no? Someone give me context. Tell me why you wouldn't like to read all caps. You guys can unmute yourselves and answer as well. That's absolutely fine. Why would you not?
Very
Yeah,
caps
sure.
is
That's
like associated with like aggressiveness. So if
absolutely.
Yeah, it kind of seems like someone's shouting at you the entire
Yes,
time.
exactly. So like Dia is also saying in the chat, it would be too intimidating. They're saying it's like someone screaming at you, right? You guys are absolutely right. It's literally like when we type text on WhatsApp and somebody puts in all caps, they're like, stop shouting. Because that's exactly what it feels like. It feels like someone's yelling at you, forcing you to absorb information. Now, if you look at the ISDI logo or the Atlas logo, it's not all caps everywhere in every single way, right? Even if it is all caps, there is a size difference that is applied. So it's short caps, not full caps. So you're getting a sense saying, okay, it's the font that is requiring this caps. It's meant to be simple in design, therefore is there. But it's also not a full page of information. It's a logo. So we want you to actually see and hear that loudly, right? So that it makes sense there. Page, it doesn't make any sense. Here, if I wrote, don't make continuous use of all caps in all caps, you wouldn't know where the emphasis is. You would just say, it's saying, okay, don't make continuous use of all caps. Instead of don't make use continuously of all caps. There's a separation that comes across information, right? Yes, Arvind, in some movie posters, it'll be made big with small and big caps, because again, there's an information delivery going on, right? If you consider even this Nivea Men thing again, right? If it pops up, this is in all caps, but it's only 2 words. Even the fresh situation here, that is only 2 words. But the rest of the sentence underneath it, I don't know if you can read it. It says long lasting freshness. That is also in full caps, but in a very small font size. At the bottom, it says fresh musk scent. So those are also 3 words, but they're the least important things over here. So it's put in capital first letter and everything else is small. Yeah, lowercase. So it's important to understand where to use caps instead of just putting it everywhere. And finally, do try and limit paragraphs to 40 to 60 characters. Because have you read a paragraph that is like 17, 18 sentences? Is it a paragraph or is that a story? What would you guys say? Paragraph of 5 lines, short sentences versus 17, 18 lines, long, complex sentences. It's a story. Yeah. The story by itself only. Like you don't even need the rest of the book. That one paragraph is a short story by itself. So it doesn't make sense. Even when we make presentations, we need limited text on a screen. We don't want to go all out and go crazy with it. The minute you have too many things happening, a person doesn't know what to look at or what to pay attention to, right? Which is why if you look at the tip on the right hand side here, it says highlight what is unexpected about your topic. Something that needs to make sense, something that a person is not expecting. Focus on that first. So if you have a simpler screen, like when we look at this, I only have one piece of information I need you to pay attention to. The context of the piece I'm giving with a picture. Because otherwise I could have just listed out 90 languages also in their actual scripts. Would that help you understand anything? So why would I put it? It doesn't make sense, right? So using all of these tips and tricks, it always ends up becoming a better outcome, right? We have a clearer way of thinking, a clearer way of seeing, a clearer way of saying. And with typography, it becomes really critical for us to actually look at that. Now, I could have very easily dived in over here and made a bunch of slides with different fonts and different visuals and all. But you guys already know that stuff. You'll use things like Canva, you use things like Microsoft Word, you use things like Adobe softwares, right? You use your type tool over there constantly, and you're constantly bombarded with different typefaces all over the countryside. That is something to explore on a much larger scale. I would need like 5 hours to sit with you guys on that. We don't have 5 hours, so we have to make do with the time we do have and make sense of what we're trying to say. And that's the actual conversation around typography. So I'm going to go back to the first slide. It's a visual conversation. When we have a conversation, we need to say only what we need to say, because otherwise we've lost a person. On a poster, you're giving a person less than 10 seconds to absorb all the information. On a billboard, you have about 20 seconds, depending on the speed the person is traveling at. On a TV screen, you have approximately 3 seconds. For an Instagram post, you have less than a second because the person's going to keep scrolling until they see something attractive on their page. So if we want to retain the person, the first thing we need is something that is bright, attractive, and simple. I don't know how many of y'all follow Faye D'Souza on Instagram, but if you look at how she presents the news on her page, it's very simple. It's a gray background with black text. And the first slide is a simple piece of typography, says the news today. And it has the date, and that's it. So when you scroll, now you get singular pieces of information per story on a single square page. And that's it. It's bite-sized chunks, information that you need that's legible, clear, readable, to the point, and succinct. It's also got a font that has been chosen that is very serious because it's the news. It's not a joke. So you want to take it seriously. The alignment is placed in such a way that we read it left to right and top to bottom in the right order. So the hierarchy is there. Most people would just see that and say, oh, they're lazy. It's so simple. It's so boring. It's really smart because you're getting all the information you need. And when you consider all the news channels, they have the big headlines and they have tons of information everywhere. How do you know what to read? It's crazy. Yes, Vidya.
Sir, I'm Lakshmi. Could you repeat the name of the person who you mentioned?
Faye D'Souza, Faye D'Souza, D'Souza.
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
She's absolutely brilliant at what she does. Even as a TV presenter, she would always be very sure to pause in certain areas to have a conversation with her audience instead of just screaming at a person. And that made people pay attention better, retain information better, and therefore understand better. Now, one person that I will suggest that all of you look at really, really closely, and if you really want to dive into it, there's an episode on her in Abstract, the Art of Design on Netflix. Paula Scher. She is considered the queen of typography, right? So if everyone can very quickly on your phone or on your device, I want you to look up Paula Scher, Paula, last name Scher, and just look at her work. She redesigned the logo for the Public Theater New York program. So it's just called The Public. She took a font, looked at it, and said, I can tell a story with this font. All I have to do is modify its weights. I'll put the name in the chat. Yeah. She's considered the queen of typography because she can take type and tell a story with it. Something that she did for a long time was make album covers for musicians. Now, on an album cover, you want an image that stands out. But if you use typography correctly, you can also convey the emotion. So she did a cover for Bruce Springsteen, and she used a typewriter text font on it. And it sold the idea really well because she put the type on a lined page. So it looked like a letter that was being typed. It looked like text that was coming out. It's simplicity at its best, but it can have so much character, right? When you think of all the logos that you see, when you see the Starbucks logo or you see the Lego logo, they're iconic. That's typography. It's telling you a story. It's making you relate. It's holding you in really, really tightly. So I'm going to leave you on the image concept in your head of that. And I want to challenge you guys. Yeah. Over the next week, try to come up with a choice for a typeface, right? For a font that describes you best. And I want you to write that out in that font and send it to Deonsa with a reason as to why you think it works. Why does that font represent you? It's a lovely way to get to know yourself and to get to know typography in a fun way. Yeah, it becomes a lovely self project, a self identity project. For me, that font is called Permanent Marker because I love using permanent markers. I love moving freely, but with a sense of decision and purpose. And so it has a very nice form to it, but it's also got a nice artistic vibe to it. I love using that font. I absolutely love it. So in that way, if each of you can identify with a font, with a particular weight of the font, perhaps, because I know one person who loves Garamond and will use it forever until they die, but they use it very specifically at a medium condensed font weight, sorry. They don't like the bold version. They don't like the regular version. They like a very specific medium condensed version because it really captures them as a person, their character and their feeling. Yeah. So play around, have some fun with it, and play with type on a page. Try to see how you can make the most sense and try to come up with something that looks really good. All right. We shall drop it off over there because it's a lot of information in a very short time and I want you to digest it a little bit. But yeah, this is something we take very seriously at Atlas, at ISDI. If we're not able to create clear imagery, then we can't tell a story well. And if we can't tell a story well, we've lost our client, we've lost the client, their customer, and that isn't okay. So as a designer, we take our responsibilities very, very seriously to make sure that whatever we're giving to people as a user experience, it's at the top of its game. An example of that would be the Mumbai public school system. So the BMC decided they wanted to create a brand new learning setup for parents because parents were asking for ICSE board, CBSE board, SHA, FSHA. So the BMC was like, okay, we need to figure this out. They picked a school and they came to us and they said, we'd like you to design the entire branding, typography and logo for this entire system. And our students, not our faculty, our students sat together and figured it out. And they found the best font that would work. They modified the font. They came up with their own version of it. They tweaked it so it had the right font weight and the right kind of shapes and forms, the right structure as a written piece. And today, the BMC is so happy with it. They've launched the branding, they've launched the school, and now they're looking to expand using the same brand manual across all their schools across the city. So just think about it. If you like to play and tell stories, typography may be your area of expertise waiting to happen. With that, we'll call it a day on typography, but happy to take any questions, any kind of doubts you guys might have. And yeah, open floor.
That's brilliant, Jake. I remember when I did come and visit ISDI that we saw the entire project over there.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So cool. Those of y'all who are on YouTube can post questions as well, and we can moderate those questions in. Okay, but fantastic, very, very insightful topic, and I think explained very well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Right. So till any questions come in, just for the audience here, does anyone already have the question, to build up on the question or the project that Jay gave you? Does anyone already have some font that they relate to over here? No? It would be interesting. I think that's a very interesting exercise here. Yeah. And over the next week, if students can work at that, but if someone has something already, it would be interesting to know what it is and why they did it, why they chose that. Yeah. Cool. Right. So while maybe a few more, we'll give a few more minutes for questions to come in. All right. But you know, I used to be in Mahindra as well, and then we went through a rebranding project, right? And so the redoing of the font entirely changed the entire perception of Mahindra as a company. And today we see that, you know, it started with the logo, it started with the typography, the graphical element, and now it's gone into their vehicles, right? So you see the whole company moving, every communication of theirs talks about how they're more a design-oriented company now, right? Where design is the forefront. So it's very interesting to see the transition of Mahindra.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, and we also have Mr. Karlikar in the chat saying the Hindu newspaper changed their font recently to get more viewership. And Dion, exactly what you're saying, like the minute you change the typography, you can make something more relatable, something more emotionally connected, something that makes it a little more comfortable to work with. Another example would be BMW. It's a very subtle change that they've made to their font, to their typography. It's a very, very tiny little change. It's literally the corners are now sharp compared to what they used to be, which was a tiny curve. So right at the end of the W of BMW, you normally would, if you had really looked carefully, they had made it a curve so that in terms of manufacturing the logo that would go onto the car, it would be easier to make it so that you have consistency throughout. And then they realized, like it's not really doing much and it's making the W look a little bit funny. So they changed it to a sharp corner and it just sold the idea much better. It seemed more confident because as they came out with cars like the M3 and the M5, people wanted punch with the car and they wanted a logo that really kind of supported that. So those are the tiny little changes that can make a big, big difference as you kind of look ahead for it. We do have a question here from Arvind. Um, it said that we have to make a portfolio related to this because I want to move into the field of film and I'm in the 12th grade. We have to make a small portfolio like short films, but I don't have any. So, okay, Arvind, you don't have to stress, right? If you have ideas for stories and you haven't made a short film, at the very least, you could maybe turn it into a storyboard setup so we can have a visual understanding of what your story is. Perhaps a script that you've written, any visual illustrations or concept art for it, um, a photo essay, perhaps. You can do anything like that also works. We just want to see your storytelling ability. And if you do have videos, great. They don't have to be the most amazing videos in the world, but your story should come across well. So even if you just grab a couple of friends, take a phone and have them act out your story and act out your script. We know you don't have a big budget for a feature film level production, so we don't want you to push that way. We want you to just tell a story really well. So if you can show us that you can figure out your lighting, perspectives, positions, the acting doesn't have to be spectacular either. That's absolutely fine. I mean, you're not being judged on somebody else's acting skill here, so it's okay. But yeah, anything you can create, anything you want to put together, that's absolutely fine. Nitya says, Gabriola describes me best because it's not too serious. It feels like somewhere in a mix between elegant and casual or whimsy. While writing a fan fiction with a friend, which you haven't finished even after 2 years, that's absolutely fine. Some writing goes on for 11 years. I've always looked forward to the chance to use that font on non-English words or emphasis. Nitya, that's absolutely fantastic. And Gabriola is a lovely, lovely font. It's got a nice subtlety to it and a nice flexibility to it. So nicely done. Good choice. You're very welcome. Do we have any other questions, folks? Anything that you'd like to know about ISDI, about the entire process? Is there something about the university you'd like to know? Happy to answer any questions. Yeah, Shweta.
I had a question. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more about like the student exchange or transfer programs that is the
Sure. So we do have the offers of 2+2s. So if you decide that, okay, there's something very specific I'd like to study abroad, then we do have the opportunity for you to transfer after your second year. But we also do have exchange programs, semester exchange programs. For example, like I said, with HKU Utrecht, they open up every year to us and they take a bunch of students on. Our students are always loving that kind of space and learning. Plus, there's also a lovely competition that they run where students go from around the world. It's a hackathon of sorts, and they get intermixed and they have to solve real world problems with actual clients along the way. So those opportunities arise, and we have an entire team that helps you through that application process, helps you figure out what the costings are, what the stay is going to be like, all of that kind of stuff, so that you're taken care of completely in that way. Shweta, I hope that answers your questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Lovely. Nitya asks, can you repeat what were the specializations in the school? Sure. The specializations are communication design, interior design, fashion design, product design, fashion communication and styling, fashion luxury and lifestyle design, strategic design management, and VFX and animation. Do we have hostel facilities for students? Yes, we do. We have a tie-up with a third-party provider that has multiple hostel locations around the city, close to campus, so you don't have to stress about being too far away. There are also bus services from the hostel to school, so you don't have to worry about spending a lot on travel and transport. And you can also get to school on time. Yesha, yes. There are exchange programs with Parsons. We don't have exchange programs with Parsons. We do have visits, though. We do have different programs that they can come up with from time to time, which we always tie into as well. Riddhi, the exam date is not on 25th. You have to take it up to the 25th. The last day is 25th of October. Yes, Ishita, I will come to fashion, luxury, and lifestyle in a moment. Vidya, go ahead. Lakshmi, sorry, go ahead.
So I want to go into the field of like video game designing in specific. So I was just wondering what courses would you recommend specifically for that I can take?
Okay, so it depends on what is the nature of game design that you're looking at. Are you looking at actually building the worlds, building the actual structure of the game, the actual physical spaces within the game, the characters and all of that? Or are you talking about designing the gameplay?
Designing the gameplay.
Okay, so if you're talking designing gameplay, then the best space to be would be communication design. But if you're actually looking at building the world and doing all of that, then VFX and animation, because that's kind of the modeling and structure and texturizing that you would do. So both are open, but the beauty of what we do at ISDI is that it's trans learning, which means that you're learning across the different spectrums. And if you're studying in communication design, you will also work with the VFX and animation students to actually develop the products that you need to build your game and to build your story.
So sorry, so for another follow-up question as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it possible, like, I mean, I'm also kind of interested in fashion design. So is it possible to take like a major in VFX and animation and then take a minor in fashion design?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as part of VFX and animation, you have to study fashion also to understand how you would create the fabrics, how you would create all those things. And even in fashion design, you actually work with programs that help you do 3D draping, 3D making, 3D manufacturing. So you can actually visualize things in a 3D space using polygons and shapes and forms and all those kinds of things to code it to fall a certain way and to have a certain color and do all those kinds of things. So you get to explore both things simultaneously and enjoy that. Yeah. Yes, Ishita, to answer your question, fashion, luxury, and lifestyle, we're talking about 3 different spaces that are all interlinked. So if you consider going out to buy a shoe, well, if the brand needs to explain who they are and how they do things, then they have to make sure that there is an event or some kind of interaction. There has to be a reason why you would spend so much money on a particular product. It's how they communicate that to you through an experience. So that's where FLLD comes into play, fashion, luxury, and lifestyle design. It's a really fun space to be in, and you're not just looking at the product, but you're actually thinking of what is the product that needs to be made, what is the experience to deliver that product, and also what's the kind of process that a company would need to execute to get to that stage. Yasha, can you elaborate on the second cycle of admissions? Adnan, do you want to take that on?
Sure. So normally, the exam cycle happens 2 times. One is the early cycle and the other is the regular one. So the early one happens now, which is the dates Jay sir has already shown you. The regular one will happen after your boards, after your 12th boards, somewhere in March, April. And once the dates are finalized, it will be updated on the website. And the other thing, Beyonce also informed you, and I had also messaged you. So the 12th October session, which we are doing, is basically to answer all this kind of questions about the program, about the admission process, about the dates, and all these questions will be answered on 12th October, 5 p.m. session.
Yeah, I think that's a very good session for you all to attend. I think
Yes.
Ms. Bulbul Chowdhury will be there, right?
Yes, Bulbul ma'am will be taking the session, and I think that will be more important, for the students who are inspiring to join us this year. So all the relevant questions and all the questions will be taken up on that day, and we'll try to answer for you.
All
Also,
right.
we have one final question here from Arvind, which is where can I get the portfolios related film activity done by the students of ISDI? And what are the syllabus related to film and film design? Will they teach direction? Yes, you do learn film direction in the film production side of things. In terms of the syllabus, you can actually look at it on the website. The entire course profile is over there, so you can actually go through it and see what you'll be learning in that space. And in terms of where you can get the portfolios of students, unfortunately, we don't release other students' portfolios to anyone else, but you can definitely check out our students' work on our Instagram pages and on our website as well. So you can actually get a sense of what they do and how they do it and what to kind of expect. But again, in terms of the portfolio, just think about yourself telling your stories in the simplest way possible. Like I said, drawings, sketches, scripts, any kind of writing, poetry, your sketchbook pages. If you've made short film attempts, even small clips, right? Show us your editing skills, show us your visual storytelling skills. Simply just take your phone, take a couple of friends, go outside and tell your story. That's it. That's all you need to do. It doesn't need to be complex. It doesn't need to be high level production values. If somebody is giving you a budget of 10,000 rupees and giving you all the equipment and everything to help shoot it, great. If you don't have that, that's fine. I'm sure everyone has a smartphone. You guys can all make films like you do on Instagram through your stories and stuff like that. That's all you have to do, really. Yeah.
So can I know what we have to type in the Google to know about this website?
www.isdi.in.
Yeah.
ISDI.in.
Yeah, Arvind, you could also go on to DQ Edge, and it's listed as one of the schools there. When you do that, please make sure that you click on that application link there if you're applying to ISDI. The reason is it tracks who from DQ Labs is applying to ISDI, and we're able to direct you to Adnan, and so that any questions related to admissions, it goes directly to Adnan. Otherwise, it's going to be a mess. So you can go to the website, get some information, but for the application aspect, please go to DQ Edge. I'm going to post the application link in the chat as well. I've also sent a feedback form. Please fill in that feedback right away. We've crossed the time limit. We'll probably take these last couple of questions before we'll close. Yeah?
Sure. Yeah, Shweta, go ahead.
I had one question regarding the portfolio. So I've worked on like a bunch of branding work. Would that be something that would be good to include in my portfolio?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. For each of the branding things you've done, put one slide that contains all the information and we'll be happy to look at it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Lovely. Yes, Lakshmi, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm working on this graphic, like a mixed media graphic novel for my 12th grade art project. Can I add that in my portfolio?
You absolutely can. If you have a PDF completed version of it, then just upload that PDF to a Google Drive and you can just submit the link in the portfolio and we'll just be able to click with that and go through. Just make sure it's titled correctly and maybe a couple of still images of the graphic novel, and then yeah, let us click through and we'll go through it.
Yeah, it's not completed like yet.
That's absolutely fine. Even if it's a work in progress, whatever you have done, just compile it, put it together and put it up. We'll be happy to look at it always.
Okay, thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
And on this note, I think thanks so much for being interactive to all the students. Thank you, Adnan, for organizing this, and most importantly, thank you, Jay. It's been a wonderful presentation, very clear, very thought-provoking, and very engaging. All right.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye. Bye.
Thank you, sir, for
Bye,
giving us
everyone.
the pleasure to interact with your students, and thank you, students, for coming. And now hope to see you on 12th October.